Hello and welcome. My name is John Batchelder, and I am the Executive Director of the Dallas Chamber Music Society, here to present another episode of Chamber Music Chats, our final episode of the 2022-23 season. This featurette hosting guest artists from our season's roster to engage in interesting, casual conversation about all things chamber music. This morning, I'm joined by Ori Kam, an internationally renowned violist and member of the Jerusalem Quartet, who will be performing on our final concert on Monday, May 1st at 7:30 p.m. Ori, thank you for joining me this morning.
Nice to be with you.
Great. Well, I just had a few questions. As we were talking before the interview started, this is not the first time the quartet has been to Dallas and performed on the series. While we have many patrons who are familiar with the ensemble, could you just briefly introduce yourself and the origins of the group for some of our newer community members?
Sure. The quartet actually has quite an interesting story. It was founded by 4 teenagers, high school students, who were assigned to each other as part of a routine chamber music assignment. 3 of the members were fresh immigrants from the former Soviet Union, and it was quite difficult, I think, at the time. I think it's quite difficult to immigrate at that age, around 12, 13. New language, new culture, and I think the quartet was kind of a safe haven, kind of a safe space for them. They were given a coach who was also a recent immigrant, who really invested way beyond what was necessary. And at the end of the year, the quartet had basically a program ready to be played, and the school started sending them out on basically small concerts and fundraisers to represent the school. And they decided to keep going the following year, and the rest is history. My 3 colleagues who were founding members are still in the group, and I joined in 2010, replacing the original viola player, and have been playing since in the group. We are based in Israel. The quartet was formed in Jerusalem, and 2 of our members still live in Jerusalem, actually. We're also recently involved in the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance. So we teach there, not throughout the year, but periodically. And and we are mostly a touring group, so we're about 2 weeks out of every month. We're on the road. We come to the US usually twice a year, in the fall and the spring. And we're really looking forward to coming to Dallas and wrapping up your season 1st of May, which coincidentally, maybe I shouldn't say, is my birthday.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I will make sure to keep that in mind. Well, we're honored to have you on such a special day performing the final concert of our season. Speaking of which, this program is a wonderfully robust, with some treasured works for the string quartet medium. We have a wonderful quartet by Felix Mendelssohn, a piece by Webern, and then finishing with a quartet by Tchaikovsky. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about this program and some of the why the choices of the repertoire?
The string quartet repertoire is maybe one of the 3 main pillars of classical music repertoire. So we have symphonic, solo piano, I would say, and string quartet. Every major composer wrote string quartets, usually multiples. And for many of them, the kind of craft of, they took a kind of a more careful approach to writing string quartets. And that makes us very lucky, because we have an amazing choice of an unbelievable amount of masterpieces to choose from, and programming is always fun, trying to match different pieces that kind of tell a bigger story, or 3 pieces or several pieces whose sum is greater than their parts. And I think our usually we try to basically put the string quartet as a medium, as an instrument, basically, at the center of the program, and show it from different perspectives as seen by different composers. The program we're going to play in Dallas is titled Romance, and here we try to show basically three different romantic composers and how they approach not only the string quartet differently, music differently, but also how they approached the idea of the romantic idiom differently. Mendelssohn is quite early romantic. The music is maybe still has one foot in the classical era. I always find it astonishing the distance that classical music language went from 1800 or Beethoven's First Symphony or First String Quartet to Mendelssohn, which is only a generation later, basically. We think of ourselves living in kind of a very fast-paced, high-tech time, but the kind of musical advances in musical language happening within the 28 years of Beethoven's adult life is quite astonishing. And Mendelssohn's music in that respect really captures the freshness of kind of the ability of people in general, but definitely artists, to express a very rich spectrum of emotions and inner thoughts and kind of the exploration of oneself. And I think Mendelssohn is definitely one of the composers that captures that. The E minor quartet in particular, I think, is just so full of passion and inner turmoil and an extraordinary variety of kind of emotional scapes, and I think it's always very enjoyable. The second piece jumps kind of to the other edge of the Romantic era, and it's by Anton Webern. Many audience members see that name and run the other way because they're familiar with more of his later 12-tone compositions. This particular piece is actually tonal. It's written before he adopted Schoenberg's 12-tone system and started writing atonal music. And it's Langsamer Satz, which is a slow movement in German. And it really encapsulates kind of Habsburg, turn of the century Vienna, a time steeped in richness and decadence, and the first blossoms of psychotherapy and kind of the exploration of the human psyche and emotional universe, inner emotional universe. So Mendelssohn and Webern, geographically not so far apart, but far apart in terms of era, basically the bookends of the Romantic period. And the third piece after the break, Tchaikovsky's quartet, is kind of maybe a triangulation to these two pieces. It sits somewhere in the middle chronologically, but also it's not German. When I say German, I mean Viennese and German. It's Russian Romanticism, which I think the Russian culture in general is more comfortable with extroverted expression of emotions. So it's more comfortable maybe in the romantic idiom. And Tchaikovsky in particular is quite a famous romanticist. And this quartet is not only rich and beautiful, but also includes quite a lot of Russian flavors, kind of Russian folk music, Russian sounds that remind us of maybe the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah, it's you said flavors. We have a nice sort of menu here of different romantic dishes, coming to the plate. Especially as you said, the balance with the Mendelssohn and the Tchaikovsky, but the Webern, our audience, I think, is one of those audiences, as you mentioned, when they see the name Webern, thinks of his kind of later works, but will be, delightfully surprised by the work. And of course, the Mendelssohn, so beautiful, that the slow movement, very much akin to a song without words, very similar. But so you were mentioning, the group is based, or members are based Tel Aviv, where you have a very robust touring schedule. You're in the States a couple of times a year. I'm curious for you all as an ensemble that tours quite a bit, not only locally, but worldwide. What are some of the ways that you handle that, the busy schedules of going from one place to another, continents to another, some of the ways you keep yourselves grounded, via that rigorous schedule?
Well, we are very experienced in, so we've experienced a lot of failures in terms of over planning, under planning, bad planning. And so I think the quartet is almost 30 years old. So we've had a lot of experience in knowing ahead of time. I don't know if you can hear me with the wind. I don't know. So we've had a lot of experience planning and figuring out ahead of time what works and where our limits are. We're quite meticulous in planning repertoire so that we don't have to play a different program every night, and I think it's basically a kind of a logistical jigsaw of different elements that add and take away kind of stress and difficulty. So it's that's one of those things they don't teach you in music school, right? It's how to learn these things. But I think we've had mentors, and we've been very lucky with the teams that we've been working with, agents, record label, etc., that have been very supportive and really helping us build something long term, which is quite unusual. I think more and more unusual. So we keep free time between tours, holidays, and of course also this time and space for each of us to do our own things and to kind of refresh our horizons with other inspirations outside of the quartet, which I think is important.
Right. I heard you mention, in terms of programming, kind of keeping, similar programs, so you're not having on the road to always be changing back and forth between different concert programs. I know you've all have done, for example, the Shostakovich cycle a number of times, the Beethoven cycle more recently. I'm curious, are there ways that you all, after playing it so many times and on the road, traveling and the fatigue, ways that you keep the music fresh in terms of, so it doesn't, kind of keeps it interesting for you all as a group after playing it so many times?
Well, I think great music remains fresh because it's just, my analogy is always, it's like an endless well. You can just delve, always go deeper in the music, and the music is just always so inspiring. But there's, of course, playing a piece too often or too much, of course, makes our relationship to it kind of go stale. So we have to definitely make sure that we're not doing too much as well. Yeah, the opportunity to play cycles of Bartok or Beethoven or Shostakovich is extraordinary also because it gives, I often think about, let's say, a violinist who's playing the Beethoven concerto and maybe a Beethoven sonata, and that's their relationship or direct relationship, not as a listener, but as a musician with Beethoven. Mm-hmm. Or a violinist who's played maybe the 9 symphonies the 16 quartets, 10 sonatas, the violin concerto, the triple concerto. So somebody like that, I think, has a much deeper insight into the language of Beethoven. Beethoven as a composer, but maybe even Beethoven as a human being. And I think the opportunity to do a cycle really expands, just even the associations that one has between pieces and the relationship between pieces, and then the ability to understand what makes a piece great or what makes it special. And that's, I often think that that's one of the biggest challenge that we have today. You're asking how to keep it fresh. I mean, if you were living in 1801 and you were hearing one of Beethoven's quartets for the first time, just by the music the way it was so new and fresh and exciting. And today, having heard Webern and Schoenberg and Brahms, how do we keep the music fresh and exciting the way Beethoven intended it to be? And that's a big challenge. And I think particularly cycles also for the audience are such an extraordinary opportunity to kind of go into just be in a space with Beethoven and just getting to know Beethoven, his language, or Shostakovich or Bartok or whatever it is. And that's very special.
Right. Well, sort of pivoting a little bit, as we mentioned before, this is not the group's first time to Dallas performing here. Are there kind of things you're looking forward to about your return to the city here in Dallas?
Barbecue.
Right.
Second on the list, I would say barbecue.
Yeah.
And no, we do love our barbecue.
Right.
But I think going back somewhere is always, I used to always say that when I joined the quartet, I could guess, going on stage, I could guess how many times the quartet had been somewhere before. Mm-hmm. It's just that relationship with the audience, and that is just something very special, and we're really looking forward to reconnecting with your audience, and of course with Dallas. We have a lot of good friends that are working at MSU at SMU, and so we feel like a little bit like extended family in any case. But we're really looking forward to coming.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you'll have some time to get some nice barbecue while you're here. I know it's a quick visit, but we can certainly have some recommendations for you. One question I've been asking our past guests, and I wanted to ask you as well, is there a specific chamber music experience that holds special significance to you, either as a performer or an audience member, perhaps even the aha moment for you that sort of, got, sort of pointed you in the direction that this is what I'd like to do with my life, with my career?
Yeah, my mother is a viola player as well. And she always loved chamber music. And since I remember myself, my earliest memories, she would have friends over on Friday nights for chamber music reading, and everyone would it would be like kind of a potluck, and people would come with their families and their friends, and there'd be like 40 people in our living room, and people would be just sight reading chamber music. And these are some of my earliest memories. And so for me, chamber music has always been kind of not just the intimacy playing with other people, but also with the audience. There is something about, I think, chamber music in particular that is, it's like a very honest communication between human beings. It's not, relative to other mediums like symphony orchestras, for example, or opera, even more extreme. It's kind of stripped down from a lot of masks and show. There's something very stripped down and honest, which is something that I really find inspiring about it. And also being a member of a string quartet, I don't think a lot of people know my name, so that's great. It's not really about ego. Of course, we need ego to be performers, but I think I think that that's something that was always very special for me. It's discovering the music, much more than going on stage and exposing my own vision, but or myself, and being able to do that with other people in a string quartet, but also with a more intimate experience with the audience, I think is really special and really unique. And I think when people experience it, they get it. I have a lot of friends who are not musicians and are not regular classical music concert goers, and they usually come hear a concert when I play, and they really get it. They get it. There's something just so real and honest about it, and I think that that's very special, particularly in the kind of time and culture where that we live in now, which is which is it's a little bit different. But I think also, when two human beings sit down and have an honest conversation, there is something transcendent about that. There's something really, I mean, honesty is just so, we just fall in love with honesty. And there's something very honest, I think, about string quartet in general, which I really love. So I don't know if I can point to a specific experience. Maybe the first time that my mom asked me if I could join her friends and play together with them.
Mm.
I remember what it was. It was Brahms' C minor piano quartet. I will never forget it. I was practicing with a recording before so that I'd be ready, and so yeah. I mean, I think it's something really wonderful, and also, there's something really beautiful about particularly classical music that really cuts across generations. I remember sitting down and playing chamber music with my childhood teacher, who is older than my grandparents. I mean, he's 97 now. I remember sitting down and playing with him, and just there's something that really cuts through those generations. Same with the audience, in a way that maybe popular music doesn't.
Mm.
It can, but something about just the emotional journey that classical music takes us on, I think, is something that is universal and cuts through ages and backgrounds, and even kind of education when it comes to classical music. I think that that's something that our quartet really focuses on. It's really not to be the musicologist quartet, but to be the kind of really take our listeners on a journey.
Right. Well, I have to say, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of what you mentioned, the honesty and just the intimacy of the experience, chamber music compared to others. I will also say, as a violist who performs in a string quartet myself, I certainly know your name, and thrilled to have the opportunity to perform with you. I mean, to interview you and have the group perform. So I have to ask my last question for you, Ori. This is my sort of viola nerd moment here for you. Is there a piece, a specific quartet that you feel as a violist is just, specifically the most enjoyable to play in terms of the part, or just the group, the piece itself, or just how it fits in the part, or just, filled with great solos, or whatever it is?
That question comes up a lot, and it's the question I always find the hardest to answer, because I just love this music so passionately.
Mm-hmm.
There's just very few string quartet pieces that I don't, and it comes and goes. I think so. Maybe I'll mention a few.
Sure.
I think Bartók's Sixth Quartet, and I think maybe you'd imagine that I'm giving that as my first example because of the opening, which is viola plays alone, and it's just emotionally so deep. I mean, it's one of probably emotionally the most deepest music imaginable. But actually, I would say that it's not just the opening solo, but the journey that the piece goes on, and how it starts and ends, and the whole arc of the piece, which is really kind of extraordinary. I would say that maybe at the moment, the music I enjoy playing the most is Bartók string quartets in general. I just find find them so mysterious and simple at the same time, and they're this exciting frontier, I think, of repertoire for audiences and for musicians that are just, we're still discovering this music.
Right.
I love Dvořák for a lot of the same reasons. Just like Bartók, it's so emotionally rich, but also never sarcastic or never falls into depression. You know, there's something very childlike about, you know, even in the Sixth Quartet of Bartók, which is really probably the most heartbreaking piece I could imagine.
Yeah.
It's kind of still has this childlike, it's like he doesn't understand why things are so sad. It's the inability to imagine. There's still something so naive about it. And Dvořák is the same. I mean, there's a lot of sad music in Dvořák, but actually you always leave the concert with a smile on your face.
Right.
Mozart is probably, I'll play Mozart any day of the week. Just for the dramaturgy in the music, I just think that's so great. Just like going to a great piece of theater or opera, and the humor is just inexhaustible. And I would say that perhaps the only repertoire I really miss playing in a string quartet is Bach. I always go back to Bach. Yeah. It just has everything in it. It's just so amazing. Just the foresight that man had, and the skill. I would say just the raw skill of compositional skill of putting notes together into something that is so far greater than the sum of the notes. I think Bach. I wish he had written more string quartet. I wish he'd written string quartet. I mean, we do have the kind of art of the fugue, but maybe that's not necessarily what I was thinking of.
Right.
So I'm sure there's a lot more. I mean, Smetana First Quartet is obviously a great viola piece. I love that piece. It's a great viola solo. But there's a lot of great solos. I mean, Debussy and Ravel, and we're just so blessed with so many fantastic pieces. You can wake up every morning and have a different favorite piece. And we always say that we could live 3 lifetimes and not get through everything. So,
right. That's absolutely true. Well, thanks again, Ori, for joining me here this morning. I know, again, you have a very busy schedule, and I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you to our audience members who are continuing to tune in for these chats. I guarantee this is a concert you will not want to miss. The Jerusalem Quartet performing on Monday, May 1st, returning to Dallas. We look forward to welcoming you there.